Rall. You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, or TMI for short, where we actually do bring you too much information. Today, we're kind of flipping the format a little bit because of all the gigantic breaking news last night. We needed to expand on one particular topic, give it a little bit added attention, if you will, because, you know, Bibi does Washington. Bibi came, he came, he saw, he conquered. Ted, I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. He now, Donald Trump is now his fully owned subsidiary.
I think so. I think they're signing the documents. So we're going to talk about that in the first half. And then on the back half, we're going to bring in our guest to talk about these tariffs that are on hold for, I don't know, how many more days, Ted? 20 days? What's the math?
I'm going to say 27.
No, 30. Okay, 30 days. He didn't say 1 month. He said 30 days. Okay,
30 days.
February. Damn it. February has 28 days. It messes up all the math. It makes it hard.
Also, it makes your rent or your mortgage like you're like a poor value, right? Because
the days don't.
You're not getting as many home occupation days. If you're homeless, of course, you're like winning. Although it's February and you're outside. Yeah. But 28 days, you're still paying for what's on average 30, 31 days. So, you know, you're kind of getting shortchanged. I'm just saying. Warning, of course, we do allow F-bombs here. So if you are... Today's news kind of calls for them too.
Yeah. So if you're sensitive to that, just turn away now. We don't need to hear your angry emails or your angry comments about.
Well, you can send them. We'll just curse it. We'll just curse at them and drop more F-bombs. So that'll be
so funny.
Probably kind of a waste of your time.
Yeah. So, you know, this is just who we are. I'm sorry if this is, you know, if it offends you, but this is who Ted and I actually are. And if you're used to seeing us on FCC controlled media, you know, we're not cursing for that reason because the FCC won't allow us. But here, kind of different story. And we do it live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So guys, please be sure to like and follow the show. It will really help with all of the different platforms, get the algorithms going. So that way other people can get more, we can get exposure to more people to help grow this channel. And Ted and I can hopefully continue to do this for you as an actual living. Right now, we're not making a living. Thanks. We're still
not making a living. We're not making anything. We haven't made a dime on this show.
That's true.
Actually, we've lost money because
we've lost money.
Yeah.
This is an endeavor, right?
Yeah, we've spent for tech stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, we're still unemployed thanks to the Biden censorship regime.
That's
Here
true.
we are. So you can help support us, if not financially, then at least retweet, reshare, repost.
At least support us metaphysically.
Yeah, like and follow the show. So you guys already know what the topics are about. So let's get into it because there's a lot of stuff before we bring our guest on. We're going to talk about that first topic.
We're skipping the headlines and we're just doing. We're going to do just two topics today. We have a guest coming in at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to start in with Trump's presser yesterday. But let's jaws it.
Yeah, Ted. I think I'm going to start selling timeshare for Trump Tower in Gaza. 2029.
Club Med Gaza. I have a cartoon that's starting to go a little viral this morning. It's from last year, and it shows someone standing in the pool at like Club Med Gaza and doing a land acknowledgement. You know, those stupid those dumb land acknowledgements that like progressives do. You know, we are here to, like here in New York, it'll be like, we recognize that we are standing here on the ancestral home of the Lenape people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, that's not helping them. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you could leave.
You're still at Club Med Gaza.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay, so in case you missed it, we're going to play it. But President Trump declared yesterday that the U.S. should seize control of Gaza and permanently displace the entire population of Palestine, of the devastated seaside enclave. One of the most insane ideas that any American president has ever advanced. Hosting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel at the White House, Trump said that all 2 million Palestinians should be thrown out of Gaza and forcibly moved to places like Egypt and Jordan because the place is too devastated to live in. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too, Trump said at his news conference. We'll own it and be responsible for disposing of unexploded munitions and rebuilding Gaza into a mecca for jobs and tourism. Sounding like the real estate developer?
Yes.
Trump, of course. Trump vowed it to turn into it the Riviera of the Middle East. Sami Abu Zuhri, senior Hamas official, said that Trump's proposed relocation was a recipe for creating chaos and tension in the region. You know, the Hamas people, they're supposed to be the crazy terrorists, you know, Manila. They sound, if anything, like they're not terroristic enough. They're like so mellow and calm. Like,
why are you so diplomatic?
This could cause tension in the region. Yes, Spock. I think it could cause more than tension. Our people in Gaza will not allow for these plans to come to pass, he said. What's needed is the end of the occupation and the aggression against our people, not expelling them from their land. Trump waved aside opposition from Arab countries like Egypt and Jordan, suggesting that his powers of persuasion would convince them. They say they're not going to accept, he said. I say they will. Netanyahu, sitting next to Trump, looking like the cat who ate the canary,
eating grin,
smiled with satisfaction as the president first outlined his ideas. Later, during the joint presser, the Israeli prime minister heaped praise on Trump. You cut to the chase, Netanyahu said. Well, Hitler used to do that too. You see things others refuse to see. You say things others refuse to say. And after the jaws dropped, people scratched their heads.
Laid it on thick, huh?
You know he's right. This is the kind of thinking that will reshape the Middle East and bring peace. Well, it will reshape the Middle East. That's true.
Peace, I don't know.
Peace, not so much.
I mean,
I don't.
Can we just, Ted,
the
point
peace
out
of the grave?
How Bibi, he knows how to lay it on thick.
Oh, man.
Thick. Oh, my God.
He's like, man, that guy, I mean, you know, he must really swallow each drop. You know what I mean?
Like,
each
I know
drop.
everyone says
nothing dribbles down his chin, that one.
Right. Like everyone says how Trump, you know, how easy it is to just kind of win him over just by paying him compliments and petting him, basically. And he's just like, purr, okay. Like, and that's all Bibi had to do. And that was it. And now we're going to look, you know, for the Gazan Riviera, I guess, in a few years. Because again, he's talking like a developer.
You can't look. Here's the thing.
Weird.
I mean, here's the thing. Trump is right. People. I mean, what the Israelis and what Trump are counting on is that basically the Israelis created a fait accompli on the ground. Right? They destroyed everything. They bulldozed what was ever standing. We've seen footage of the IDF. They found some buildings that had survived the bombing, and they methodically went into those places and demolished them and destroyed them. Hilariously, some of the IDF soldiers, hilariously, some of the IDF soldiers who died were actually died while trying to demolish these buildings. They didn't know what they were doing.
It wasn't combat.
No, I mean, it was their own combat. They literally had a building. They made a building fall on their own asses.
They're not construction workers, right? These guys are military guys operating construction equipment, and
they didn't know what the fuck they're doing. They're dipshits. So anyway, the point is that they destroyed everything. 90% according to the UN, of all housing stock in Gaza is now gone. All the infrastructure is gone. You know, there's no running water. There's no sewage system. There's no electricity. There's no internet. There's nothing, right? There's no hospitals. There's no places to buy food, even if you have money. There's nothing there, right?
Well, look.
So Trump is right. You can't really live there. But you know,
no duh.
But the whole point,
he's sitting next to the guy that made it that way. Trump.
I have an idea.
Talking,
but there is a solution.
It just happened.
Look, there is a solution.
This is how it is.
The people of Israel, they largely supported this war. So they should clean up the mess. That means all the people who live in Haifa, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv, they should all move out, and the Palestinians can move into their homes. I think that's like fair, and that's what should happen. The Israelis shouldn't be asking like the UAE and like Jordan and Egypt to clean up their mess. They made this mess. This is their fault. It's not Hamas's fault.
It's
not the Gazans' fault. It's their fault. They did it. I mean, at this point, That press conference was so outrageous. I issued a statement
Yeah.
this morning saying, I believe this. The UN should meet. These are both Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are no longer fit to hold office. The UN should send in the white helmets. They should invade both Washington and Tel Aviv and overthrow these governments. They can't. These are rogue states. I mean, the U.S. and Israel. They can't be allowed. Anyone who suggests ethnic cleansing is a grotesque violation of international law. We don't allow it. It should not.
Well,
this is outrageous.
Let's just define, and I'm reading this. I'm enjoying playing with Grok, right? And I wanted to ask Grok how Grok defines ethnic cleansing. And Grok says ethnic cleansing is a term used to describe the deliberate and systematic removal of an ethnic, racial, or religious group from a specific geographic area by another group. This removal can be achieved through various means, including violence. And it explains violence, forced displacement, like expulsion or relocation under duress. I would say that qualifies. Intimidation.
No question.
It explains that. Legal and administrative measures like laws or policies that restrict rights or citizenship, making life untenable for the targeted group. The goal of ethnic cleansing is often to create ethnically or religiously homogenous areas, thereby altering or, quote, purifying the demographic composition of a region. It's important to distinguish ethnic cleansing from genocide, though they can overlap.
They're not the same. Yeah, but they are related. Yeah.
Ethnic cleansing does not necessarily involve the intention to physically eliminate the entire group, as in genocide, but rather to remove them from a territory. So,
but ethnic cleansing often leads to genocide. For example, during World War II, because
Grok, I think, was very fair.
If Hitler could have snapped his fingers and made Europe Jewish free, he would have. But then that wasn't practical for him, as far as they saw it. So that's where they had the Wannsee Conference, and they decided on the final solution. So they're related, but they're not the same.
Right.
Trump said, "I don't think people should be going back to Gaza." I heard that Gaza has been very unlucky for them. I mean, the way this guy talks.
He says it's unlucky, as if it's again like it's just like coconut falling out of a tree. Like Kamala Harris said, right? Like, oh, you were laying under a coconut tree and it knocked you upside the head. That's not what happened.
They live like hell. They live like they're living in hell. Gaza is not a place for people to be living. And the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. He suggested that nations in the region could finance the resettlement of Gazans to new places, perhaps a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land that would provide better living conditions, either as a single territory or as many as a dozen. It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. He said, without offering details of what that would entail.
Go ahead. On that part, he's talking about, how this place is leveled, it's all rubble, blah, blah, blah.
And he's right about the undetonated ordnance. It could take 10 years or more to
that's a different subject. But on those particular points that he's making about basically saying this is all like a shithole rubble, right? He could very well be talking about the Pacific Palisades. Imagine if he told the people in the Palisades back home, if he went over there, met with Karen Bass and was like, all these people at the Palisades, it's been very unlucky for them. Look at this. It's all rubble. How about, these 50,000 families, we're just going to have to relocate all of them elsewhere, maybe into like Compton or Inglewood. Find them a fresh piece of land somewhere. Maybe, Inglewood is redeveloping. Or we'll ship them away. No one would find that acceptable. It would not be acceptable if he told the
the thing is, we all know that the Israelis have been wanting to do this for a long time. And
beachfront property, Ted, the Palisades and Palestine, same thing. Beachfront property.
That's totally true. Asked how many Palestinians he had in mind, he said all of them, adding, I would think that they would be thrilled. Mr. President, I would beg to differ. Pressed repeatedly on whether he would force them to go, even if they didn't want to, Trump said, I don't think they're going to tell me no. He's a nut.
Let's hear the speech.
Let's hear it.
Little 3-minute tirade.
Little diatribe.
His plan.
What an asshole!
Tirade.
I don't suffer from TDS. he's an asshole.
No.
He should be removed
But-
from the presidency.
well,
This
I
is
don't-
impeachable
it
right
is
here.
an
This,
asshole move.
and by the way, guess how many congressmen and senators we've heard from about this?
Zilch. Well, actually, Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey is the lone
What did he say?
senator to tweet. He condemned Trump saying this, and then he kind of pivoted to saying, like, this is going to further, make America unsafe, and this
That's
is not
true.
America first. And so Thomas Massey is really the
That's
only
surprising.
He's like the lone guy.
Yeah, and
So-
Bernie doesn't have anything to say.
No.
Elizabeth Warren doesn't have
No.
anything to say. Cory Booker doesn't have anything to say. They're
let me
all
preface
just
this, Ted.
quiet.
Let me preface this that
Scoundrels.
I as much as this is an asshole move, it's not because I think Trump is great, and I think you know that, but I think he responded the way he did, not because he actually cares one way or the other about the Israelis or the Palestinians.
No.
I think this is just who he is, that he wants to see this conflict come to an end, resolve some way, somehow. And the easiest, most expeditious way to do it is just by accidentally ethnic cleansing. Like, he didn't even realize that he's calling for ethnic cleansing.
So I want to give Trump his due.
So I think that's the benefit of the doubt.
So the genocide did not happen under Trump's watch. It happened
Right.
under Biden's watch, and Trump is inheriting that. So it's true that when you're the president of the United States, you have to deal with the facts on the ground, and the facts are that all there is ground, right? And so it's true that like the Palestinians really can't live in Gaza. The only proper solution here would be for Israel to cede the land, allow the Gazans to live for, say, 10 years in Israel, and then they have to pay to rebuild it, and then the Gazans can move back home. That's the correct solution.
Well,
we all know the Israelis aren't going to do that. But
I don't know what the solution is. I'm just saying. I
what
think
would President Chan, isn't that what she would do?
I wouldn't say let's permanently displace people, because that's ethnic cleansing and a violation of international humanitarian
and common
laws.
decency. Yeah.
So, but I think, again, with Trump, I don't think he's meaning to do ethnic cleansing. I think he's looking at it as a transactional thing, and I don't think I think he just wants to. He's glad that the fighting ended or on pause, and I think he's literally looking at this in the most pragmatic manner that a Donald Trump can.
It's also, I got to tell you,
know the history.
If you're
you think he knows the history, Ted? Come on, you think he knows why these people are attached to their land?
No, it's just very unlucky.
Clue.
Unlucky,
right? That
Palestine,
shows you when he says unlucky. That shows you his shallow breadth of knowledge that he has about the region.
Mm-hmm.
Shallow. So that's him just talking as Donald Trump, the developer. And so maybe I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and he doesn't deserve it. Or maybe I'm right. Maybe he's just that ignorant to geopolitics and history that he's just like, let's just redevelop it and make it like the Gaza Riviera. And he means it. And he
it is obviously a beautiful place. Like,
yeah, of course.
I mean, you see those pictures of the refugees who are trying to return to northern Gaza. It's really incongruous, right? Like the stream of refugees next to this stunning beach with the beautiful waters of the Mediterranean.
Azure water. Yeah.
So pretty. And the weather's great. I mean, it's
okay.
It's really, it's crazy.
All right, let's play this crazy soundbite.
By the way, I just want to say, if you were Palestinian and you hated Hamas, right now, Hamas isn't looking so bad, right?
Well, there you go.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good. And it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there. and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again.
Okay, wait. So when he just literally 30 seconds ago, when Trump says we're going to go in there, we're going to clear the debris, we're going to clear blah, 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 that reeks to me of Kushner development. Reeks. It reeks of Kushner.
Agreed.
It just, that's all Kushner right there.
Yeah, because Jared said, that's valuable beachfront property. And
remember his dad, Ivanka and Jared have this in common, right? Both their dads are developers. Jared, obviously.
And both of them are felons.
And there you go. So, it's
like, can you imagine the first date? Hey,
contract.
wait, your dad? Wait, my dad too.
Mine too. So, I think that sounds to me like this is like President Trump took off the MAGA hat and put on the Trump Inc. hat, talking there, and was like, let me do a deal with my in-laws and let's go clear Gaza, man. Like Trump International as well as Kushner Inc. They're going to go there, and it's a land grab. They're going to develop. That's what it sounds like to me. And again, I don't feel like he actually has any malice or anything talking about the Palestinians.
No, I think that's true.
Completely devoid of it. Like,
no.
I think he has no feelings. Like, he's just like, this is property. It's beachfront. Let's make it beautiful.
He's autistic.
Get jobs.
He's autistic. There's something like, what's interesting is, autistic people are famously extremely compassionate, right? And he is compassionate. He really does. I think he really does look at that and thinks, he's seen the images. He's like, these people are suffering. The Palestinians, they're living. Who can live like that? And so that part, that's the correct part of his, assessment. He's right about that. And then, but where he goes from there is where things fall apart, because he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how this happened, who's responsible, and that really there needs politically to be. There needs to be an accounting for that. This has nothing to do with October 7th. It's like it followed October 7th. October 7th was an excuse It's like it followed October 7th, but it was like, the Israelis were waiting for a chance to do this, and they bombed Gaza many, many times, including, I think it was in 2014, and in 2010 before that. And I mean, they've been coveting this land for a long time, and and October 7th gave them the cover. And given the fact that they had a senile American president to deal with, who was willing to give them a blank check, it gave them the cover to do whatever they wanted and to take it over. And they were like, this is our big chance. This is our big, when we're not going to blow it. And now, so what Trump doesn't realize is that he's seen as playing into that. And by the way, don't forget 9/11. Part of 9/11 was motivated by the plight of the Palestinians,
Yes.
and that was trying to get our attention. Man, if that didn't get our attention, I mean, you could just imagine radical Islamist groups in the Middle East being like, well, obviously the U.S. has to be, punched in the nose again, or, so that they get the message. I mean, this is extremely dangerous for the United States. Israel, our partnership with Israel, they're like the worst friends or allies you could possibly have. They're like that friend you have who's always like, they're like, hey, Manila, let's go out partying, man. They're drinking in the car. The car doesn't have, like, it has stolen license plates. They're driving like 120 miles an hour past the cop. Fuck you, like giving them a finger.
Yeah, that's Bibi.
And then you're like, but I just wanted a ride. And you just end up in prison next to them, right? Even though you didn't really do anything. That's Bibi. Bibi is like the insane friend, the drug addicted, alcoholic, lunatic you shouldn't hang out with. I mean, what would happen if the U.S. had nothing to do with Israel? Oh, what would we lose? Israel's what? Oil? Their geopolitical position in the Middle East? We don't need any of that. We have all that. We don't care. We would be really so much better off. We should we should ghost them and never talk to them again. Bye.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get why we keep using that whole excuse of Israel being our closest ally in the Middle East and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, they have the technology that they have.
We're their ally. They're not our ally.
That they have, and they have the things that they have because we foot the bill for everything to help them get there. Yeah. I mean, realistically, the U.S. really does have no allies in the Middle East. And that's for good reason, because the U.S. obviously keeps going in to not only bomb those lands, and then we keep occupying those lands. So the U.S. really has no allies. So we had to kind of create this ally, I would say, out of thin air, the U.S. and UK. I mean, we can boil this all the way back, right, to the creation of the borders of Israel, and when it was first assigned to the United Kingdom to take care of it, as kind of like what did they call it? The caretaker government at the time?
It was it was the UN mandate.
Yeah, and from there, it was like the UK told the US, like, hey, you want in on this? And we were like, yeah, okay, sure, that sounds good. Let's do it. Let's do it. And then we've had, in the back half of the 20th century, this guy who seems like he's been in power forever. Like Bibi is like how you talk about Teflon Don, this guy being Teflon Don, the guy next to him, Ted, is more Teflon than Donald Trump.
That's true. What a pair.
Like wow.
It's so sickening. Wow. The whole thing is sickening. Looking at these two shitheads sitting in front of their crackling fire, warm and cozy on a February day in Washington, and talking cavalierly about the forced removal of 2 million people who are completely, aside from that, are already desperately traumatized, all of whom have lost family members. Not a single one hasn't. They've lost their homes. They've been everything that they own has been destroyed. I mean, the
last thing I want to say about this, Ted, before, because our guest is here, the last thing I want to say about this is, and you alluded to it earlier, why does Trump think it's okay to assign, even if you were to pick up these roughly 2 million Palestinians, pick them up and say, here, Jordan, here, Egypt, you're going to take these people. Like, did you ask them, or is that something he said off the cuff? Is this a deal that's been worked on over the past year?
That's a good question.
Like,
I don't.
Why
I
was
don't
he
believe
able to
so.
just say that? Yeah, I don't. I think he
I don't
just did
believe
it
that
off
the
the cuff.
Let's take them one at a time. First of all, I don't think the
I
Hashemite.
think
Very
I think
quickly,
Egypt is like, what the fuck?
the
Like,
Hashemite
what?
kingdom.
We didn't say we were taking
The
them.
Hashemite
They
kingdom.
closed the Rafah crossing.
Right.
I mean,
Well, not only did they. I mean,
they
anyone
didn't
can.
want them.
Anyone can close a gate, Manila. I don't read anything into that. But they built a wall, okay, to try to prevent this exact scenario. So literally, they built the wall, and they didn't have Mexico paid for it. They paid for it. But Egypt clearly doesn't want them. First of all, it's a densely populated country. They don't have the capacity. And then the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan also doesn't, they have personal experience taking in Palestinian refugees, as does Egypt after the 6 Days War and stuff. And in Jordan, they had the Black September situation back in the day that tried to overthrow the king of Jordan. So the Jordanians who are kind of the fancy Arabs, they kind of view the Palestinians as like sort of street rabble who, like, if we left, we invited them into our homes, and then they tried to, kill the father of the family. So that's not good. So they don't trust the Palestinians, right? They're not going to let them in. And in both cases, Egypt, Jordan, no other Arab country, no Muslim country can allow any significant number of Palestinian refugees in, or they will be seen as, not just kowtowing, they'll be seen as enabling the Israelis and the genocide, ethnic cleansing. So it's kind of like, and so of course, obviously the counter pressure is to them from like Trump is like, are you going to just let them, have no place to go and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, they have a place to go because Israel actually does have room for them. There's places not far from, literally right across the border from Gaza, inside Israel. They can just tear down the security fence. They can just let them in there.
Take the checkpoints down and move some people.
And honestly, I was kind of being facetious when I said that you could expel the people from, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. But you can. Obviously, they could put in tent cities and have them sort of like after the big earthquake in Turkey, in Istanbul, and people they lived out in those tents for a few years. And then during Reconstruction in Istanbul and the suburbs of Istanbul, then they moved back in. You could probably rebuild this in 5 years. And the weather's mild enough that they could live in tents during that time. It sucks, but they could do it.
Well, like I said, Ted, Trump Tower Gaza 2029. I'm going to start selling timeshare right now.
God, I want to leave I want to leave the U.S. just because it's like, here I am in New York, like in terrorist target, the U.S. has never been at greater risk of terrorism than after yesterday's press conference.
Look at Thomas Massey's Twitter timeline. You will see.
Thomas Massey was correct. Yeah.
He's correct. All right, let's leave that there. We're going to switch gears. And here's how you know we're doing it, Ted.
All righty then. And so let me bring us in here. Okay, here we go. President Donald Trump on Monday agreed to a 30-day pause on his tariff threats against Mexico and Canada as America's two biggest trading partners took steps to appease him over border security and drug trafficking. The 30-day pauses are a cool-down period that puts us at the cusp of a trade war that risked crushing economic growth, causing inflation, and ending alliances with the United States' I would say, two closest allies. I'm very pleased with this initial outcome, and the tariffs announced on Saturday will be paused for a 30-day period to see whether or not a final economic deal with Canada can be structured. Trump said, "Fairness for all," he said in all caps, whatever that means. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, posted the pause would occur while we work together, saying that his government will name a fentanyl czar, not a czarina, but we could have a czarina, list Mexican cartels as terrorist groups, and launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. What, no Space Force? The pause followed a similar move with Mexico that allows for a period of negotiations over drug smuggling and illegal migration. The 10% tariff that Trump slapped on China, however, is still going to go into effect this week, although Trump plans to talk to Chinese President Xi Jinping during the next few days, and the Chinese seem confident that they're going to be able to talk Trump off the ledge here. While the trade war was feared by investors, companies, and political leaders, now seems less likely to erupt. That doesn't mean that the drama is over. Canada and Mexico bought some additional time, but Trump could easily renew his tariffs and already wants to announce taxes on imports from the European Union. Remember when Europe was our ally? All of this leaves the global economy uncertain about whether a crisis has been averted or if possible catastrophe still looms. Joining us to talk about this is Achilles Larrea. He's CEO and founder of Larrea Wealth Management. He's the author of the book, Your Money and You, The Ultimate Guide for Latino Entrepreneurs. Achilles, thank you very much for joining us here on the TMI show.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you. So, Achilles, do you think, what do you think is going to happen at the end of let's start with Canada and Mexico. 30-day pause, is it going to be extended? Or is it just going to, is there going to be some sort of agreement here? Or could we still be staring down the barrel of some tariffs?
Anything's possible at this particular point. I think that the 30 days gives them a little bit more time to, hey, let's slow down a little bit. Let's open the channels of communication, which is never a bad thing. And at the end of the day, isn't this about money? Because that's what it feels like to me. Are we going to get a bigger slice of the pie and render unto the U.S. what is it, the U.S. at this particular point? That's my opinion on this at this particular point. I think that at long term, in terms of an agreement on tariffs, let's go on the positive side first. We come to an agreement at the 30th day, or we extend it out 60 more days, and we keep the lines of communication open, then that's going to be a boom to us, because that means Canada and Mexico are saying, hey, we're open to the possibility. Let's see what we can do together without us, meaning Canada and Mexico, losing our sovereignty, not feeling like we are part of a deal. My attorney a long time ago would say, hey, a good deal is where one person walks away and their arm isn't hurting, or their face isn't hurting because they got slapped. But on the bad side, let's go to if it turns out in a bad way, then we're looking at an increase in pricing. We're looking at an increase in inflation, which is going to be bad all around and could put us into a recession, guys, because these are the things when you start getting negative growth, all around GDP, that's the classic definition of a recession. And we want to avoid that at all costs. Yes, I understand that the Trump organization is trying to make the Trump presidency is trying to make its mark early and fast, which he said, none of this is a surprise, guys. He's been long. So nothing he's saying is out of the ordinary. Though I do say the Gaza thing took me a little bit by surprise. But, at the end of the day, it is money. We are talking about, if I'm an entrepreneur like Trump is, if I'm an entrepreneur, good or bad, and we're making money, you're going to look good to the American people because we perceive we're making money.
I kind of want to break these down because we have situations with now Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU, and I don't know, Vanuatu can not be far behind, right? So with Canada, I'm mystified because there's by all accounts, less than 1% of the fentanyl that enters the United States enters through Canada, and basically nobody's sneaking from Canada into the United States. Maybe 6 people. Just nobody. So what was that all about, really? What did Trump really, why is he messing with the Canadians? The Mexico thing, I understand. It's well established. Fentanyl, drugs, blah, 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 blah. Migration, I get it. That, I just don't get what that's about.
Well, it seems to me that what it's about is, once again, we started with Mexico. He's thinking, let's start with Mexico. Let's work with the war on drugs again, going back to the classic Republican themes of the day. And so Canada would be another way for Mexico, the cartels in Mexico, to start bringing and funneling in drugs. So they'd have ships or what have you go up to Vancouver, go up to the Northeast Corridor and bring it down that way. So he's thinking, I'm gonna, or who knows what he's thinking, But like you said, Canada has no viable malfeasance at this point,
Right.
to say, I think it's more important. Look,
It's
at
like
what
if I
he's
just
done
started
with
hitting my cat
Colombia.
for no. It's like if I just started beating my cat over the head, he'd be so confused. He's like, I don't do anything wrong.
And this is a classic Trump move because he does the same thing all the time. He does the sensationalism, and then you have to ask yourself, well, okay, but what's really behind this? Because if you look, he already slapped a tariff on Colombia, all right, at 25%, which is a major drug haven. All right. So what we see is a precursor. We saw a precursor of Canada and Mexico at this particular point. But like you said, there's not too much to gain in Canada at this particular point. I think he's sending the message out. Hey, the free ride is over in his eyes. The free ride is over. But he doesn't realize that these tariffs are going to do more damage to us as a consumer than really help us. Back, let's go back to, let's just say the 1920s or 1910, when they started using, before the IRS was in vogue,
Right.
tariffs were the way that revenue was brought into the United States, right? You didn't have big government, so the Republicans
You couldn't have big government because we didn't have enough revenue.
Of course. And they're thinking, hey, why don't we bring us back to those days? But a lot of times, we just have to point back to history. Smoot-Hawley Act, classic definition. They brought that act into play, slapped tariffs where you could, and it drove us depression. Okay, we were already in a depression. It made the situation even worse, and Hoover did nothing. So at this particular point, I'm scratching my head. Is this a warning to China and Russia? Russia really doesn't have any goods per se, on a large scale that they're bringing into us. But are we sending that shot across the bow saying, hey, here we are, remember who we are, and let's try to, understand each other better? And I think with China, it's more a piece of the pie.
It also feels like fighting the last war, right? I mean, look, I'm from the Rust Belt. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. It's no place has been more devastated than Dayton, Ohio, by globalization and outsourcing and deindustrialization. So, I have sympathy for protectionism. But that said, it feels like the horse has fled the barn, right? I mean, if tariffs might have had a place against like Japan for dumping steel in the 70s and 80s, for example, or for against China when China first was admitted to the WTO in the 80s and 90s, and they weren't admitting American goods, and we had a massive trade deficit. That probably would have been something that the Bush 1 and the Clinton administrations ought to have considered. But it just seems like now, I mean, I'm sorry, Dayton ain't never coming back,
Neither is Pittsburgh.
Right.
We're looking at the same scenarios here. If you could imagine our special forces coming into a building to clear it out of bad guys, and the bad guys left 6 months ago.
Yeah, that is. I mean, at least Pittsburgh reinvented itself as a healthcare place. Yeah.
Oh, did it? So, Achilles, I'm glad that you brought up China because I pulled them up on the screen here because we're talking mostly about Canada and Mexico for obvious reasons, right? There are immediate neighbors, and it's ironic because Trump is the one that tore apart the first NAFTA, made his USMCA, and then out of the blue said, I'm tearing that up. I'm going to start a trade war with our neighbors again. And then he threw in China for 10% tariffs. And then China, I mean, we all know, everybody in the United States, you don't have to be, a financial guru to know that the U.S. relies heavily on Chinese production of goods, of all the stuff that we use. So China does have the capacity and the power to slap back, right? And they did. And this is what it looks like. CBS here, showing 15% on coal, 15% on liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude, 10% ag machinery, 10% large engine cars. I mean, these are some of the things that the U.S. exports that China takes. China's not going to take this lying down. No one seems to be talking that much about the trade, the tariff war with China, because it's been ongoing ever since his first administration. Where do you see this going? Because China's obviously they didn't respond this way the first time in Trump's first administration, but now they are. So how do you see that shaking out?
I think it's a preemptive strike on the part of the Chinese. And the second thing, like I said before, we got the sensationalism. The Chinese have made their move. Now we as the Americans are thinking, okay, well, the Chinese have a certain amount of goods and products that come in, but now in a roundabout way, Mexico has a lot more products coming to them. So, it's cheaper to produce similar in Mexico for exportation to the United States. So that's just one thing to consider. Back to your question, with the 15%, with the 10%, they are slapping that right back at us. We're going to be tit for tat with the Chinese. They didn't go as high as 20% because they have a lot more goods, to offer the United States. So they just went. I mean, the United States has more goods to offer as well to the Chinese. And honestly, the Chinese could be just shrugging their shoulders at this particular moment, saying, okay, 10%, you come up to 20%, we'll take you up to 25%, and we're in a trade war.
This is like
deal.
poker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
But
worse than
we're
poker.
the ones paying for it, no?
That's right. And we are the ones who need to say to our government, hey, knock it off. Have a little bit more responsibility here. Can we let some more adults into the room? Can we form a bipartisanship to address these tariffs? Because this shouldn't be one person's idea alone. This should be a bipartisan approach, which hasn't been happening in over a decade, guys. The bipartisanship has been lacking severely. It used to be, if you look back to the Clinton days, when you had a Republican Congress and working with Clinton, the Speaker of the House talking, saying positive things. I don't see that leadership here in the current Congress, in the Senate and the Congress itself. So, the House. So my particular thoughts and feelings is, how difficult would it be to have everybody, including President Trump, get together in a spirit of governance and say, hey, let's make this happen. Let's make it for the right reasons and happen. We need to get some more revenue in. Let's not kid ourselves. But let's do this the right way. Let's not just be a petulant child saying, we're going to slap you with tariffs and that's it. And you're going to fold because we're the United States.
Well, I feel like that kind of behavior has just been rewarded by the way Canada responded and by the way Mexico responded. I mean, right now, I have video here we can look at. Right now, there's literally Mexican troops being sent to the border. I think a lot of this is over by Tijuana. That they're moving there right now. I mean, they're literally shipping 10,000 border guards. I mean, aren't they folding to basically what Donald Trump wants, because they're obviously trying to avoid this trade war, but at the same time, it's rewarding bad behavior. It's rewarding petulant, childish behavior.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, but we have to remember that the Mexican military is corrupt as sin.
True.
Unfortunately, a lot of there's a saying amongst Latinos that goes, as Mexico, so does the rest of Latin America, Central and Latin America go. So what you have to remember is at this point, Mexico is simply continuing the policies that AMLO started with, of this capitulation to the United States. They were being tough on other things, but they have a new president. She's inexperienced dealing with a gentleman like this, in my opinion. And still showing force. I watched her press conference in Spanish the other day, and she made some really good points about the U.S. But at the same time, I think she's also showing that, hey, we're open to it. We're open to the possibility, but that doesn't mean we're just going to roll over on you. And that's what we have to remember. There are, the politicians in other countries like Canada, like Mexico, actually answer to the voters. All right, the voters will kick them out. I mean, I watched in one Latin American country, there was a pots and pans campaign where they were banging on pots every single day until they got what they wanted, and they did get what they wanted. It sounds funny, but the people forget, especially the citizens here, we forget the power that we have against the government. We just are apathetic in the sense to this. We can fight back, absolutely. We can pressure our congressmen and senators to make more responsible decisions. It's not just, hey, let's lay down, oh, it's too hard. No, it's not going to be that way. If you want true change in the government, and I'm not talking radical change, I'm just talking, hey, if we're going to all get along, we have to all agree, not just one side of the aisle.
Yeah, Americans like being keyboard warriors. I think a lot of it. The pots and pans thing. It's like, oh, that's novel. I hadn't thought about that. So
it's funny. That was Indians in Ecuador. They the indigenous population. Yep, in Ecuador, marching on the Capitol, asking for the ouster of a president, and it became not just amongst them, but the entire population said, okay, enough's enough. And I think less than a month later, he was out.
Well, do you think this ties at all, Achilles, with how Mexico is responding, ties into the mass deportations and stuff that Trump is now outlining and making good on, right? Like he had his envoy Granell going to Venezuela. President Maduro suddenly appears to be friendlier with the second Trump administration, saying, yeah, we'll take back 350,000 illegal migrants. Do you foresee that maybe this is part of the calculation with Trump and how he's throwing this tariff threat on Mexico based on the theory that you said, how Mexico goes, the rest of Latin America will go? Well, do you think this is, part and parcel of that maybe he's thinking, hey, Venezuela has a lot of oil. Hey, there's production capacity somewhere else in other parts of Latin America. So Mexico, you better get with it or I'm going to go make best friends with Maduro right now.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. People also forget there is a huge oil cache in the Amazons. So the surrounding countries that the Amazon flows through, there is possibility for development there. All right. So that's another thing. A lot of people don't know that, by the way. So going back, yeah, we make the example with Mexico. Maybe something is happening under the table money-wise, guys, which would not be unusual. We have paid off governments for many years down in Latin America. Just take a look at the Contras, with, Reagan. Also, there is another bad byproduct of this. Wanting people back to their countries, you're sending criminals as well, which we did before, and we're repeating that mistake because the MSs of the world came to being from Americans, not the country that they came from. As a matter of fact, the leadership of MS-13 was really more based in Los Angeles. When they got deported back to El Salvador, then all of a sudden the crime rate spiked. The government could not handle it, and took the extreme measures that they're taking right now, with the prison system. And, look at that. We got, Bukele, I believe is his name, came out and said, we are going to offer money for U.S.,
Oh, that's right.
immigrants
Send
from
us,
there.
send us,
We're gonna-
send us your criminals. We'll
and
house
how much
them.
are you going to pay us? How much are you going to pay us, guys? Tell me that isn't corrupt as can be.
It's so
You know?
insane.
And-
I couldn't believe that when I heard
Good point.
that yesterday.
That's crazy.
And Trump's not like dismissing it out of hand.
Oh no, it's too easy. When think about it this way: the current prison system in the United States, most of it is not private, because we saw that the private was keeping prisoners longer for profit, was doing things that were under the table that they shouldn't have been doing. Were getting paid. Judges were getting paid off for bringing more prisoners into that particular facility. This opens the door for even more corruption. So we need to watch this system. Get rid of the watchdogs, which Mr. Trump has done. Then how are we going to be vigilant on the prison systems? Absolutely not. I don't see it happening. So we as the people need to go to our congressmen, need to go to our senators and say, hey, if you let more private prisons into the system, we're going to have a whole lot more issues going forward.
Well, and then let's not even get into the 30 to 36,000 migrants that are being sent to Guantanamo Bay.
That's so crazy.
I mean, that's
another cash cow, guys. Think about it. It's another cash cow.
It is.
It's going to cost however much it costs to house American prisoners here in the regular prison.
$10,000 to $20,000 a year.
Yeah, I was going to say like somewhere around 30,000.
Depends on the state. Yeah,
per person. Yeah, roughly 20 to 30 grand per person per year. But being shipped out to Gitmo, where it's not U.S. territory, that's somebody's cash cow. For
it
sure.
is U.S. territory. Just to be clear here.
Technically, yeah, that's true. Technically, it is, but it's
this
devoid of U.S.
Bush
laws.
Introduced this fiction. There's no place on the planet that is not subject to some kind of legal jurisdiction. And to say that like somehow Gitmo exists in some sort of netherworld that is neither Cuba nor the United States nor who knows what it is, even international waters, you can't just like commit crimes. Okay,
right? You can't just say it doesn't. Well, but that's because our government doesn't view it. They do view it as some sort of netherland, right? Like nowhere.
Trust me, that's not true. Like if you pick another Marines like pocket at Guantanamo Bay in the canteen, you're getting arrested. Okay, there's
but not what we do to the detainees, and that's my thing. Is like, okay, then how much can you charge per detainee? Because they're a quote illegal migrant. How much can you charge per head? And how much per guard, per head, per hour, per whatever? What are they eating? The food has to get shipped in. That is a whole micro economy in and of itself. And I feel like Bukele knew that, and that's why he is like, hey, bring them here.
It's also humanitarian abuse, if you think about it, because how are families going to visit their loved ones in prison down there? How are they going to do it, in the other countries? If we start exporting prisoners, and less chance for appeal, less chance, what are you going to have an appeal system down there that we're paying for? Guess what? That's an added expense. That's more money that we're paying out of pocket. Do you really want to go down that rabbit hole?
Good point. There's money in all of this, Achilles. Like, I'm glad that you brought it up because everything, the tariffs, it's always all about money. Even the whole prisoner, we like to think that the trade war, tariffs, all of this stuff has nothing to do, that it's totally disconnected from immigration. It's not. This is, especially if you look at it from the Latin American standpoint and what Trump is trying to do with deportations, they are interconnected. And I think it's inextricable. And then you view it even further. God, when you think about the prison system, it's mind blowing. It's always the money.
Achilles, let me ask you about sort of the unemployment picture, right? There's literally no more important economic indicator than employment. And it's, it seems that the Trump administration is kind of counterbalancing two contrarian impulses. Tariffs are likely to increase inflation and therefore reduce employment, cause some businesses to go under, cause some people to hire less. And we already kind of don't have, we have low unemployment, but we don't have vigorous hiring, which is kind of, so people are kind of stuck. On the other hand, you also have this mass deportation idea, which I guess will reduce unemployment because it will create, people will be removed from where they're working and will be sent out of the United States. Is that, do you think, what Trump is sort of thinking, that these two things will kind of cancel each other out and he won't be dealing with a high unemployment situation for very long? Or is this really just like, I'm a lame duck, I have 4 years to go, I can't be reelected, I don't care?
I think it might be a bit of both, but let's you brought up an interesting point. When we talk about unemployment, everybody knows the Fed, as far as their job is to help with the interest rates, but the second job that they monitoring is the unemployment, then trying to help towards that end. That's one of the two main mandates that the Fed has. Now, if you start deporting people as they've been doing, the question now becomes, who does that job? We do not have the capacity for that low-level migrant worker here in the United States. Anybody who says otherwise is a fool. Now, if you think that Americans are going to take those jobs, let me tell you, it's backbreaking, it's difficult, and pays hardly anything. The reason being is that when the migrant workers are working, they are working in the field that they do. I believe the movie McFarlane explained it best, where they get paid per field that they do throughout the day.
Wow.
So going back to that, there's not even a living wage that we're talking about there. Migrants tend to have to put all their resources together in order to make a somewhat living, and with the hope that their children will do better. But
Yes.
let's go back to other parts of unemployment. If we look at the unemployment numbers, they didn't really change significantly. It was more or less what was anticipated. And even with what the Fed's doing right now, the big thing that's occurring is that housing prices are going up. The loans, personal business loans, are going up. Why is that happening? There's a lack. We need to concentrate on building more housing. We need to concentrate on lowering the interest rates. Not, I think the Fed has been right all along about the interest rates, but I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive when they first started this. And I think they spooked everybody. The Fed did spooked everybody by saying, we're going to stop this year. We were all hot and bothered when we said that, oh, wow, the interest rates are going down, that's great, we're going to have a party. And, it doesn't work that way. As a matter of fact, it went the opposite direction, where you had the interest rates go in the mortgage arena. The interest rates are at 7% right now when it was at 5% before. But we forgot. We were at 11% just a year ago, last August.
Wow.
So we have to remember, let's put things in perspective. If seeing interest rates going down, if the Fed regains its senses, according to everybody out there, because it doesn't make sense to stop now, but hindsight 2020, it could make sense. The problem is the market doesn't like it. No market likes uncertainty. The second part is that it does not stimulate more growth in the economy, hence the tariffs. This is a strategy they're taking because there's not much that can be done. As you mentioned, Ted, there's not a heck of a lot that's going to come out of this. But let's see what we can do to stir the pot, and let's see what we can do to have somewhat set up for the next Republican challenge. Because that's what I see.
Do you think, Achilles, that Trump imposing these random tariffs out of the blue, do you think part of that was his play to kind of like a cudgel on Jerome Powell?
It's funny. He has really no power over Jerome Powell. The Fed
Right.
is independent.
Mhm.
You know, you got 12 governors who
Well,
really don't
USAID
give a
used
crap.
to be independent too.
Yeah, well, that's a different scenario, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they can cut off
But I mean,
funding to
given that
any
he
agency,
Mhm.
but
given
the
that he
Fed is
doesn't, I
different.
mean, exactly, the Fed is different. So since he has no actual power over Jerome Powell, if he figures if he can, like you said, stir the pot in the economy by tariffs, that Jerome Powell will then be forced to respond. Maybe
You know, it is a possibility, all right? But here, I would
he is a
submit this to you.
madman, Donald Trump. So
Like, hate, or what have you, let's look at Jerome Powell. This is a gentleman who's been right more than wrong. And people do not sympathize with the losing side. They are going to sympathize with the winning side, because the winning side has kept us in this expansionist mode for more than a decade. You know,
Mhm.
we have not seen a real contraction in the market till this month. I was talking about this on another media last month. I said we are going to see a rough first quarter because they haven't seen that hard of a correction. Now, with the absence of correction, whenever the correction does happen, it's infinitely worse because we haven't seen that control
Mhm.
occurring. We need to have pauses in the market. We just saw one recently, so that was good. But we need to have pauses in the market for it to go back. You know, it consolidates, it moves sideways, you know, and then all of a sudden it starts grabbing it, going up. That's an efficient market, guys. That's how we make more money in the United States, you know, and that's how these big companies can offer their CEOs tons of money. So, you know, going back to the Fed and the unemployment is controlled still at this point. The Fed interest rate, I foresee them having to do something in the latter part of this year, because the Fed doesn't care what Trump says. They just don't. And they're going to say, unless there's some imaginary thing that comes out and say, you know, aliens say, you better lower rates. You know, you better lower the rates and stuff, then, you know, that's a different animal. But in absence of aliens, the Fed is going to do what the Fed wants. They are independent. They are 12. I mean, imagine there are conservative and liberal members of this board of governors, opinions ranging from the ridiculous to the absolute super conservative. So, you know, and you have a governor, you know, the head, Powell, who is not hawkish at all. As a matter of fact, he's more dovish, more soft stand on the particular matters of the day. An adult in the room, in my opinion. And there are 12 of them, and they are making ideas that at this point, they've been right a lot more than they've been wrong. The president is simply using the power of what I call moral suasion in order to sway public opinion towards, hey, maybe the Fed should be doing something. And the truth of the matter, the person who says that doesn't know what the heck they're talking about generally.
yeah, Jerome Powell's like, whatever, I'm not listening. I don't care. So
He's drinking his smooth.
that's true. He just really didn't care. I mean, look at when Trump came in the first time, because Jerome Powell was still there, and mortgage rates were still hovering near zero in the first Trump term, right? And people were saying Powell needs to raise the base rate. He's sitting on zero for too long. And he just kept sitting there. And he was like, don't care.
And
I
he
don't
was
know
right.
if that he was right. Do you think that proved to be a good thing?
Yeah. For that particular point in time. Sometimes the best move, and I just know this as a money manager, the best move is not to take action. Sometimes it's the best because long term, and these guys aren't thinking 2 months in advance. These guys are thinking years on how things will affect the U.S. economy. I think that a lot of people, the general public, forget that, you know, the economy moves in cycles. And we've had this huge expansionist tract for over a decade, and it'll have to start contracting at some point. The question is, we talk hard or soft landing. That's not the most important thing, because when it starts, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly. I've seen this with the market. Once you start seeing the economy moving in that direction, then it's all bets are off, and you're going to start seeing a lot of panicking. You're going to see a lot of businesses folding because they were not aptly prepared. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but at some point, we're going to have to, move into that market cycle where we were all this up, and everything, and we're going to have to start going downward, and then kind of leveling off before we can go back up. All right, that's just simple market.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of pain this first quarter. So, I mean, I don't want it to be the case, but I think you're right. And then hopefully, I don't know, once we see the pain, then what? Are we going to level out this year, or are we going to keep going down through the year?
No, we're going to keep going up. It's going to be the opposite. Yeah, we're going to go back up again. But the only kink in the armor at this particular point, and we've talked about this, is the cost of living, the food pricing right now.
Yeah.
The food pricing keeps going up and up and up, and there seems to be no leveling off at this particular point. I always give the example of the Chinese or the Korean stores with the rice, 25 pound bag, the bags of rice at 25 pounds. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, those prices move up and down all the time. So just the other day, I drove by a place and I saw it at $24.99. Yet I went to another store, and the other store had it for $27.99. And then another store had it for $23.99. So there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of fluidity that's occurring in these commodity markets per se, and which has no correlation to the market, the stock market at all, and more to do with supply and demand, which is the true measure of the cost of goods at this particular point.
Yeah, very good. We're absolutely going to have you back, obviously, as the market keeps moving and shaking, and who knows, God only knows
Quaking.
what the orange man, twerking, the orange man in the White House, what he's going to do, and changes.
No twerking, no market twerking,
oh
please.
God. No, I had it in my head, Trump twerking, and I went, oh God.
Get that out of my
I
head.
don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight thinking about that.
I don't. Okay, sorry. We'll get that out of our heads. Aquiles, appreciate you coming on and breaking all of this stuff down for us. Of course, Aquiles Larrea is the CEO and founder of Larrea Wealth Management. He is the author of the book Your Money and You, the ultimate guide for Latino entrepreneurs. But I would argue it's for all entrepreneurs.
Before I forget, I have a new book out. It's called Wise Up With Your Money. It just came out now.
Congratulations.
It's on Amazon. It's on Apple. It's on all the things. The picture you see behind me, it's called Wise Up With Your Money. It's on Amazon. It's on Apple. It's on all the major retailers. It is more geared towards the American consumer. And we have an audiobook. We have all the wonderful stuff.
Well,
we do everything, when we come out with these books. The first one was great for the good for anybody, like you said.
Good name.
Wise Up With Your Money, right there. It's available on Amazon. You just published it, so it's fresh off the press. So go check it out right there.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the presses. Thank you, Aquiles. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That is a good title for a book.
Wise Up With Your Money.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't need that?
No, Lord knows I do.
Oh boy. Yeah, I try to be good about it, but I think I'm more of a saver now, outside of my
I was a saver until I started dipping into my savings to stay alive.
Well, yes.
Thank you, Joe Biden.
Yeah, me too. So, I used to, my late aunt used to always tell me her motto was, it's not how much you make,
it's how much you keep. Correct. Yeah, no, I went through a period where I was making about $70,000 a year, not that long ago, And you know, I owned my own house. I owned a car.
Wow.
I had savings. You know, I had investments. And a really good friend of mine was making $400,000 a year, and he owned nothing. He rented an apartment. He leased a car. He had no savings. And I'm like, where the fuck is your money going? And I'm like, he needs Achilles' book to wise up with his money. And what was happening was that basically he was living beyond his means.
Right.
You know, he was
at
he was living,
$400,000 a year.
He had an $8,000 a month apartment, and you know, to
This is
rent
in the city.
And I was like, okay, but live somewhere. Like he had 3 kids. He sent all 3 of them to expensive private schools. So they were. I think he was spending $40,000 or $50,000 a year each for them, pre-K to 12, before they went to college. You know, and that's after tax. New York City has some high income taxes. And so, you know, he literally, I remember just like, it was like that whole thing, you know, it's how much you keep. Well, he didn't keep anything. So, and you know, it was just like, he wasn't the kind of person who was going to like, I'm going to go out for lunch and get a shawarma after this, right? He'd be like, he'd go and spend $50 or $100, always high on the hog. And it was just like, I mean, it's hard for people to understand. Well, I make $400,000 a year. That's a really nice paycheck. You're definitely in the top 1%, but you can't. But it's very easy to spend it, especially in a city like New York. So
that's, I would say, not being wise with your money, not being wise.
Yeah.
So holy cow.
It's what you keep. It is about what you keep.
It is truly what you keep. No matter what you make, it's about what you keep. And that's.
Now, obviously, if you're making $10,000 a year, you can't keep anything.
Well, obviously, right? You just can't leave. There's a baseline, but then everything kind of in between is based on how you choose to live and how you choose to shop and how, I mean, all of those things.
And there's all sorts of attitudes. I mean, you know, like it's interesting to me. I know people who, you know, like I buy a car, I drive it, I maintain it well, I drive it into the ground, I keep it until it dies, like screaming in pain.
Like
a lot of people don't do that. Yeah, I don't care.
I do not care.
I remember driving
my bucket Volkswagen with dings and dents all in the door. I mean, it was a bucket. Yeah. I mean, it was only a 2014, but she finally died. I called her Tiggy, because it was a Volkswagen Tiguan. I drove her into the ground until last year, and I got not a new car, but a used car.
Right. I always go like factory. I always go factory pre-owned.
Yes,
like 3,
I got
4,
the
5
factory
years.
pre-owned. Yeah. Exactly, a couple years old. And it has the, you know, extended warranties, because I don't care about the flash.
There's these new subway ads. I don't know if you've had those down on the metro in DC, but here in New York, where it's all about, like, it's a company that I forget the name of it, but they sell like old MacBooks, like basically buy a 2021 or a 2022 refurbished old MacBook.
Okay.
And, you know, just buy that now and you'll save a lot of money on computers. It's like really smart. Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that where you can kind of like, you know, computers, you know,
I buy used and secondhand.
I keep my computer. I buy it fully loaded so that, you know, with all the extra memory, and it will last a lot longer. Yeah. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very, very good with my money that way. Like I like to cook at home. I like to, all those things. So whatever happens in the outside world, whether it's a trade
war, if I buy a coffee outside, I'm going to the deli. It's $1.50.
Bingo.
You know,
not Starbucks.
It's better. It's better coffee.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just how you choose to live. And to me, I don't care about brand names. I don't care. I'm like you. I drove my car into the ground. Like it was the ugliest dinged up POS. Poor Tiggy, may she rest in peace, or wherever she got refurbished to a third owner or whoever. I don't know. But I bought used again. You just search high and low. I'm very good with the money. I don't care about brand names. I'm not one of those women that's like, look at my Louis Vuitton. I don't care. I've been there, you know, in LA. It's unavoidable.
They're not even good looking purses. Sorry.
They're not. Yeah. And they're literally like, they're not even made of leather. Like my grandmother had a few Louis Vuitton items back in the day.
Those were different.
That's different. Those, I mean, I remember the smell of them. She had Louis Vuitton luggage.
My My agent was like that. She was insanely wealthy, and she had that stuff.
And but it was my grandmother, and I remembered it smelled of leather, and if you touched it, it's very different than, but we're talking 45 years ago, right? Like
that's old
this is
school.
not the same. This is not the same Louis Vuitton stuff. So I don't care. I do not care about that stuff. And my husband is probably so grateful. I'm not that woman. I don't have like all these.
I'm sure he is. Yeah.
I have a kid I want to plan for college to, all that stuff. And
my ex was way into stupid stuff like that. Like she wanted to buy a Lexus with a Coach custom interior.
My God.
And so I looked it up, and it's like Lexuses or whatever they're called. They're kind of bad cars. Lexuses. They're bad cars. They're terrible cars, right? Why
are they terrible cars?
They're kind of like expensive enough to be expensive.
They're Toyotas.
But they're not high enough level to be like really truly great cars. You're just like
they're the fancy version of Toyota. That's who owns them.
Right. You might as well just
they're a good car.
Just buy a normal Toyota.
Don't
take
that the wrong way. Lexus actually has one of the best reliability.
This was
measure of reliability.
20 years ago, that wasn't really true. And
I don't know about.
And basically, I was like, you don't want a car. You want a sofa with wheels on it. Just buy a nice sofa. Because she was like, it's really about the sofa. I'm like, it's really about the leather, the Coach leather interior. I'm like,
Coach leather. I've never heard of that. That's
nuts.
That's absolutely nuts.
It's dumb.
I want a car that lasts and is comfortable and that has the good warranty. That's what matters to me. And that's, the way I look at life. And that's why you're friends.
Also, I like cars that don't cost a lot to maintain.
Yes.
Like my
mom. That's why your friend, $400K had nothing.
My mom drove a Cadillac, and I inherited it when she died. And it was like that. I mean, it was a pain in the ass, that car. I mean, when a Cadillac or any car like that, needs repairs, holy shit, the parts.
But it's a GM product.
Yeah, but the parts cost a fortune. It sucks.
Specialized parts? It's
and also
interchangeable with like
it's not like
Buick LeSabre.
No, it's not like in the old days. Like I used to drive a 1966 Plymouth Barracuda. Great car. And all of the I got it was a California car. You can appreciate this. I was the second owner. I literally bought it from a little old lady from Vallejo. And it was a great car. It had the drop down seats in the back. So you could throw, like, she was a painter, she could throw her big pallets back there. And it was and it had a V8, and it was like 340. Holy shit. The V8 small block, nice engine.
But you can change.
But that's what I was going to say, right? It took the same parts as like a Dodge Dart and like a Chevy Nova, all sorts of like. So it was really, even though the car was ancient, it really wasn't hard to get the parts at all.
But that's the scam of cars too, right? Like they deliberately do that. It's like your iPhone. It's like iPhones.
Yeah.
Like before the new iPhones, well, you and I both got our new phones at the same time because we were forced to.
Yeah.
Product, like obsolescence, right? But Apple, up until recently, they came under fire for basically it's a scam that you have to use like their charger, like their and then they do the updates because if you buy the knockoff charger on Amazon for 1/10 of the price, they do an update to the phone to recognize that that's not a real Apple charger, and now your $6 charger doesn't work, and you have to go buy their $30 charger. That's
and their chargers aren't that great. They always bend and break and break.
Yeah.
And I'm really careful. I always carefully put it in a circle, and I put a little thing on it.
That's why I still mourn my iPhone 8, but Apple deliberately made everything. Again, another luxury, right? I kept my damn iPhone 8 until I got the 15.
I still missed the button. Remember
I missed the button.
I missed the button. Yeah.
I missed the button.
They're like, oh, you won't miss the button. I miss it.
No, I do miss it. And I don't buy a new phone every year. That's another way that they get you. It's
like, and then they're like, oh, well, don't worry, it's just part of your monthly bill. It's like, then my monthly bill is like $300 a month. It's like, fuck that.
I don't want that. No, I want a paid off phone. I want a paid off.
That's another strategy for me financially is I would rather pay one lump sum every now and then than to have anything regular. Monthly bills are death, and they are to be avoided. Or if you periodically, everyone should just look at their monthly bills and ask themselves, is there anything I can do? Like sometimes you can call up the New York Times and say, oh, I'm going to cancel. And then they'll say, oh, okay, we'll give you 3 months for free or whatever. So you can, or the cable company, you can say, I want to cancel, I want to pull the plug. And they're like, they'll give you a deal. Right.
I do that to all of my reader memberships, like to Bloomberg or to whatever. Like I just go pretend like I'm going to cancel.
Yep.
And then
you get a call.
Inevitably pop up with like, wait, we miss you already. Don't leave.
Go. We love
Here's
you.
the discount. And
we
I'm
always
like,
love you.
Assholes. Why didn't you offer me the discount from the beginning?
Like, like these days, I'm currently a subscriber to the New York Times, which I'm sure you are too.
Yes.
And it's like, and I'm sure you've seen, I'm getting these emails that say like, oh, you can get the New York Times for $1 a month. I'm like, well, like you're punishing me for being a longtime subscriber.
Right. Yes.
And like, meanwhile, some like rube, some asshole that you've never heard of, you're going to give to, what the hell?
You're going to give $1. Right. I've been supporting you for 20 years and you're going to offer some.
Where's my dollar?
$1? Like, why aren't you giving me a subscription for $1? Like what the.
I don't know if they think about that stuff. I know they want new subscribers.
For retention. I don't know. Dude, you need to think about retention more than new.
Right. I agree with that.
Because their brand is dying and it's more people like you and I and our age group and above that subscribe to them.
That's true.
The youngs don't do that. So
it's basically deceased and older is their prescription base.
The Joe Bidens.
Yes.
And the Gen
Xers,
for
example.
Is all they have.
That's what they've got. That's it. All right. We'll leave that there. That was fun. Here. All right. Sure.
I'm a tightwad. I admit it. I'm frugal. Our old producer, Lath, who some people used to call the Bitcoin bro, right? He notoriously always made fun of me for being so frugal. He said I squeaked when I walked because that's why when you asked about picking up a penny the other day, I said, absolutely. I will put my fingers in dirty water to pick up that quarter.
Dog poo.
I will get that money. But maybe not the poo. But if I'm walking along and I see it, absolutely. I'm notoriously frugal with my money. But I'm a good tipper. I always tip like where it counts. But the way I live my life is very modest.
Tipping well is a good investment though, because then you consume less spittle in your food, and then you have fewer doctor's bills. It's good juju. Good juju, I would say. And because my family owned a restaurant, so I get it. But I also don't go out to restaurants very often. So there's that. So it's my chance to splurge and be kind to somebody that came from the industry my family came from. So indeed.
All right. That's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you for staying with us. Please be sure to like and subscribe, whichever platform that you are on, to help us grow this little thing. I'm so stoked that we're hitting our milestones. It's like when you have a brand new baby, right, Ted? When you're a new parent and your baby, they're like, your baby hit the milestone. He's, this many inches long, and he's like, his weight is right on target. And you're like, yay, I have a healthy kid.
Exactly.
This is it. All right, guys, thank you. We'll be back again tomorrow. Hasta mañana. See you at 10.
Bonsoir.